Today on the Take On Board podcast, I'm speaking with Tricia Montalvo Timm about CEO succession planning. Before we start the podcast today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record. For me, I am on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I also pay my respects to any First Nations people who may be listening today. I acknowledge their continuing connections to land, waters, skies, culture, and country. I support Voice, Treaty and Truth for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and I encourage others in the Take On Board community to do the same. Now, let me tell you about Tricia. Tricia is on the board of Salsify and serves also as the chair of their compensation committee and a member of the audit committee. Most recently, she was on the CEO search committee, something that I'm sure we will hear more about today as we talk about CEO succession planning. She's previously been on the boards of Silicon Valley Executive Board, of How Women Lead, the Advisory Council of Latinas and Power, and the advisory board of the Katherine and George Alexander Community Law Centre at Santa Clara University School of Law. Tricia is a board director, venture investor, speaker, and author. She's a first-generation Latina who rose through the ranks of Silicon Valley, advising high-tech companies, big and small, culminating in the sale of the data analytics software company Looker to Google for $2.6 billion. It's a lot of zeros. Tricia currently serves on the board of Salsify, as I said earlier. She's also the author of an award-winning book, Embrace the Power of You, where she hopes to inspire anyone who has ever felt like an other in the workplace or perhaps in the boardroom to embrace their true selves, own their identity, and achieve success and fulfillment in their life and career. Tricia, welcome to the Take On Board podcast.
Thank you, Helia. Nice to be here.
It is so good to have you, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation about succession planning. However, as always, before we go there, I want to dig a little bit deeper about you. Tell me, what was young Tricia like? And when did you get your first inkling that you might end up in the boardroom?
Young Tricia. I'm the daughter of two immigrants. My mom is from
Mhm.
El Salvador. My father is from Ecuador.
Mm.
And I was born in Los Angeles, California. And when I was young, they definitely wanted the American dream, if you will, for
Mm.
us and gave us a really wonderful education. And young Tricia from the beginning was independent, high achiever, goal oriented. My mom used to tell me that the kindergarten teacher would tell her I was leading the class in kindergarten. And
Mm.
so I would say that throughout, my life as a young person, I just sort of set goals, and particularly I always seem to find things that were told to me that were unachievable, and I would just say, I don't think that's true. I think I can achieve it. And which it's, if I look back and reflect. So I think the first inkling that I wanted to be on a board was something along those lines, where I was finishing up Looker, and I had come to realize that Latinas represented less than 2% of the boardroom.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I was very surprised to hear that statistic, but at the same time, not surprised at all. I
Yes.
had, as a corporate attorney, been in the boardroom for over 20 years, usually the only woman in the room, and certainly there were no women of color in the room.
Mm.
So I think when I heard that statistic, it just made me think, I, I need to break that statistic too. So so then I decided I'm going to go. And I reflected and realized I had the credentials. I had been working in Silicon Valley with tech companies, with VCs, with underwriters, bankers, the whole thing. I knew how to navigate a boardroom. So I thought, why not me? And then I started my board journey from there.
Ah, indeed. Why not you? So what was your first board role? How did you land your first board role?
Yeah, so my first board role was Salsify. It's a late stage venture backed company based in Boston. It's a software company. And my board journey started at an organization called How Women Lead. They have a board readiness program and they have a summit, which is called Get on Board Week. And it's a week-long summit where they have lots of programming. And part of that, they teach you how to create your board profile, your board pitch, your value proposition. And one of the most important things I think was this network, they call it network mapping exercise, where you look at your whole network and see where you might have a connection that might lead you to a board seat. And so for me, I took it almost like a full-time job looking for a board seat. I just, I created my spreadsheet and I started putting down all the names of people that I knew in different parts of my career and just started reaching out, after I'd figured out my board pitch and my value proposition and just started talking to them and telling them this is what I'm looking for. And I knew exactly the type of company I was looking for. I was looking for a company that was late stage private in the software industry. I was agnostic to where it would be located. So I was open to different locations. And so eventually those conversations led me to a board recruiter. And that board recruiter had this opportunity and connected us.
Oh, that is fantastic. Well done you on, I love that, you've got your spreadsheet, you're mapping it out. It is so important. I mean, obviously having the key pieces of the collateral, so to speak, your pitch, your value proposition, those sorts of things are key, but you got to use it, right? You got to get out there and actually tell people.
Yes.
So that is fantastic to hear. Yeah. Well done you. Excellent.
Thank you. Goal oriented, remember?
Oh yeah. It certainly sounds like it. A
Yeah.
go-getter.
Yeah. This is funny. I actually had a little piece of paper right on my wall that said, I will be a board member. And just to remind me every day to like keep at it because it takes a long time. It doesn't happen quickly. And
Yeah.
just keep
Oh,
having the conversations.
actually, out of interest, how long did it take from that summit or whatever it was, the get on board summit thing? How
Mhm.
long did it take before you landed the role?
It took, I would say, almost a year, maybe about
Yeah.
11 months, which
Yeah.
is relatively short, I would say,
Yes.
in terms
Definitely.
of a board search. But I
Yep.
really was actively looking for those 11
Yeah.
months. It wasn't
Yeah.
something I did. I mean, every single day I was really focused on having conversations with people.
Yeah, that is great to hear. Likewise, I generally say to people a year or two. A year is quick,
Mhm.
but you were putting in the extra hard yards for it, so that
Yes.
makes sense. Oh, fabulous! Thank you so much for giving us some of that context around it. Valuable already in so many ways. Uh, so now let's turn to the topic of the day: CEO succession planning.
Mhm.
As I said earlier, you were involved in the working group, I think, for the succession planning on Salsify.
Mhm.
So, where should we start this story?
Well, I would say once the company decides that it's time to have, well, I think probably it starts before that. Really, a board should always be thinking about a succession plan
Yeah.
with the CEO and various members of the executive team. So I think always having in the back of your mind potential possible successors
Yeah.
within the talent on your executive team is something the board should regularly be thinking about. So I would say that is probably where you start. And then once you come to the realization that, yes, it's time, every situation is different. There are situations where a change has to happen quickly. There are situations where the change might happen over a couple of years. And, in our case, we had a founder CEO, and he was ready to, he'd been at the company for, I think, 12 years and he was ready to let the reins go to help the company move on to the next stage. And so it was a very collaborative process, which we were really fortunate to have in the search process. And there was no rush, and so we were able to take our time, be very diligent in our efforts in the whole process.
Yeah, that which in and of itself is a joy to have, and you don't always have
Mhm.
that luxury of time and space.
Mhm.
So, the CEO indicates, the founder CEO indicates it's time to move on for them to hand over the reins, as you say. How did the board then approach it? What were the steps that you
Mhm.
took?
The first thing we did is we realized we needed to go outside of the company. We didn't
Mm.
have someone within the team that could fill the role that we were thinking needed,
Mhm.
and so we started with hiring a outside board recruiter. But I would say even before that, I would say simultaneously with that, I think the number one key thing is really getting board alignment on
Yeah.
what the CEO profile looks like.
Yes.
Who are you looking for? What are the key qualifications? Because people could have a different opinion on what they're looking for, or what the outcome, you might want to have. And in our particular situation, we actually have a number of different stakeholders within our board, from early stage investors to PE investors to independents like me. And so we might all have a little bit of a different take on what we might want. And I actually think it was wonderful to have a different take on what we're looking for, because it brought in just somebody that had all of those qualifications, and really strong CEO.
Interesting. I love that. Yeah, what are you looking for? And particularly if it's almost a changing of the guard, I guess. If the founder CEO
Hmm.
is, it's time for the new phase, then it's not just picking up the position description that's been in place for the last 12 years, because the company has morphed and changed and
Hmm.
evolved in that time. It's what's going to take us into the future. Okay. So in practical terms, how did that happen? Oh, sorry. And you were going to add something else.
Well, it's interesting because that triggered for me something that you said, that yes,
Mm,
there were different things that we wanted for the next, say, someone who had seen ARR at certain levels and of growth, and for example, but there are also things we wanted to retain. And
mm,
he had built a phenomenal culture at this
yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And we did not want to lose that in this transition. And so part of
Yeah.
one of the qualifications and key aspects we put in the spec was, somebody who that really valued the culture.
Yes. Yeah, right. Which again, great. It's not let's throw everything out and start again. We've
Mhm.
got some really good aspects of the leadership that has been in place. What do we want to keep? What might we want to change up?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes.
So in that process with the board in working that out, in practice, how did that happen?
Yes, so we then decided to create a subcommittee of the board, and
Mm,
that's what we created, the CEO search committee, with three of us on that board. We have a board of eight.
mm,
So three of us were on that CEO search committee. And I would say that what was also nice about the three of us is that we were all different in terms
mm.
of our backgrounds. One was an early stage investor, the other was a PE investor, late stage PE investor, and then I was an operator, former operator, and
Yes.
independent board member. And so the three of us, came at it from a little bit of a different perspective,
Mm,
which really I think was valuable in that process. We actually created a process that we would went like step by step, like who's going to interview first, who's the next, if they pass that, who goes next, if they pass that, who goes next. And that really helped in really just streamlining the process. And then I would say another key aspect of the process was the background checks, and
mm.
not just the ones that they give you, because those are always wonderful.
Yes.
But we spend a tremendous amount of time on trying to find background checks from people that worked with the candidates,
Mm,
that so that we really understood the type of person that they were, from somebody who worked at the board level,
mm.
maybe a PE sponsor level, a CFO that might have worked with them, or even subordinates that worked under them, so we could understand their leadership style. So each of us took that responsibility, and each of us called different people ourselves. We decided we did not want to rely on the recruiter. We wanted to have those personal
Yes.
conversations. And then just really, and then actually in that process, noticing sometimes, what is the source of that background check? And then we as a team, as the CEO search committee, would meet weekly, to know and understand, and we'd meet with the board recruiter weekly to know who's in the pipeline, who are potentially new candidates, the existing candidates. What do we would debate them in real time, and then we would take on, like I mentioned, the background search.
Interesting. Oh, again, already so many questions. So, just in that background search part, I'm interested again in practical terms.
Yeah.
You're, doing some background checks on the person. How do you balance up the confidentiality of candidates with
Mhm.
doing those background checks? How does that work in practice?
It depended on who it was. There were
Mm,
oftentimes we knew people
yes.
that knew them. So I potentially might have known somebody that worked with them, and so it was
Mm,
a relationship,
yes.
and that was helpful. Other times, the candidates we would be honest about, hey, we want to reach out to
Yes.
people in this organization, and so they knew that we would
Mm,
be reaching out to them.
yeah.
So it just, I think it depends. We first started with, does anybody know people that worked with this person, or know people that, at that company that worked
Yeah.
with this person?
Interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
great. And the other thing, this is completely different side, but just from go to woe, how long is this process? From the moment the founding CEO says, okay, I think it's time for the new phase, to the new
Mhm.
CEO feet on the ground, how long was the process?
It took us probably 8 months.
Right. Interesting. As I asked that
Mhm.
question in my head, I was like, I reckon about 9 months was my
Yeah.
guesstimate. So that's
Yeah,
interesting.
you're there it is. Spot on.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So in that process, you've defined what it is you need collaboratively with the board. Well, actually, as I say, pre-step, the current person has said it's time. Then the board has collaboratively worked out what you need. You've then engaged a recruiter in that process. Um, got some candidates through the process. Done the pre-checks. What happens next?
Well, the interview process, and
Mhm,
so we had a lengthy interview process with members of the board,
mhm.
and then some members of the management team. I mean, this is where it might change depending on the organization and who may or
Yes.
may not know of the change. Our then CFO knew about the change, so she
Yes.
participated in that process. So I think, we just went through the interview process until we found the right candidate.
For the successful candidate, how many hoops did they jump through?
Well, I would say they probably met with maybe 7 people, and they
Mm,
probably met with, with the then CEO and CFO several times, probably
mhm.
3 times, and, everything started virtually, and then they, went in person and met the team that were part of the search process in person.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say it was probably a month-long process.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. And look, this whole process in a way is a transition.
Yes.
Um, it's a transition of the founding CEO to a new role, of the new CEO coming in, of the board also transitioning their relationships. I'm just wondering in that transition process what you've learned about transitions, um, and how that played out within the organization as well, because it's also for the people reporting to the CEO, it's a
Mhm.
transition for the staff, all of those things. So I'm wondering what reflections or learning you've got about transitions.
I would say, 2 things. One
Mm,
is really acknowledging stages of transition.
mm,
And
yes.
I had, prior to this, I had sold or helped lead the sale of Looker to Google. And we had to go through that integration, that sale and integration process. And it was such a great learning experience because we had learned in that process of was called stages of transition, which is similar to stages of grief. So there's the letting go, the limbo, the starting to accept, and then the new beginning. And I think that I took what I learned there and brought it over to work with our chief people officer and saying, how do we acknowledge that people are going to go through this stage of transition? Because this founder was loved in this company, and we knew that it would be a very hard transition for the company and the team. And so how do we sit with it, give space to know that, the letting go, this is going to be surprising. It's going to be shocking. There's going to be sadness. There's going to be grief. There's going to be confusion. There's going to be questions. So that we had to give space for that. Then it goes to the limbo, which is kind of that confusion. Like, I want to go back to the old ways, and, where are we, and the old, the new. And then, moving into the starting to accept, which is like, oh, maybe this is exciting. Maybe this is interesting. Let me lean in. And then the new beginning, which is excitement and hope and energy. So that, I think the stages of transition that I learned from the M&A context really made a lot of sense in the CEO transition context. And we saw the team go through that. And so that was really beneficial. And then the second piece of it was just communication. I mean, over and over communication, from starting with the, communicating honestly and transparently with the executive team, getting them fully on board, helping, and them coming into the fold and helping communicate to the next level down, coming up with a communication plan to the rest of the company, coming up with, how are we going to communicate it, in what stages. We have the founder, he went personally out to different parts of the organization and talked from his heart to different, people. We had communication plans to our customers and our partners. And so I just think you can't over communicate something like this. The more that you communicate, the more that you're with people along this journey, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And, the stages of transition that you described and the communication going together. I mean, because people don't always travel that journey at the same pace.
No,
Staff might be
exactly.
ready to, staff might be in the letting go phase and the board is already at starting to accept, or different
Yep.
parts of the board, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be.
Mm-hmm.
So communicate, presumably helps people to keep moving through the stages, even though they're at different stages.
Absolutely. You nailed it on that. And actually it was something I had to learn myself on the M&A sale, because when I communicated the sale to Google to my team, I asked them where they were in the stage. And there were some people that were like excited, ready to go. And then some that were just sitting in sadness, and just recognizing that people are in different stages as a leader is incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. And the founding CEO themselves would have gone, presumably
Yes,
for them, they
they
started
did.
to let go and went into limbo before potentially they may have even told you that that was where they
Yes,
were at. So
I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
just out of interest, where's the founding CEO who is no longer the CEO? Where are they now?
Oh, they're taking a well-deserved sabbatical.
Ah, good. Excellent.
Yes.
Lying on the beach somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the new CEO, now that they're in place, how's that playing out? How are they settling in with the board, with the staff, with the team, with the stakeholders?
He's been phenomenal. I mean, just exceeding all of our expectations, and just came in with, he went out to all of our customers immediately, in person, sat with the employees, did a number of town halls, talked to everyone personally, has just such an incredible high EQ on that regard. has completely mapped out a vision for the company. Everyone's behind him. I mean, it's been, almost like if you want to do a case study on smooth transitions, it's one of them. It's been remarkably successful.
Oh, amazing. Well, kudos to you in being
Yeah.
involved in that smooth transition because it is not always the way.
No.
All right. So, from your experience and from the conversation that we've had today, what are the key things you want people to take away from this conversation?
I would say when you're thinking about a new CEO, I would spend time on the profile. What
Mm.
exactly are the key skills and qualifications that you're looking for? And
Yes.
getting alignment across the table on that, because people might have different ideas of what they're looking for, and having that debate early on rather than because this is one thing actually I learned, talk about a story, is that if you're interviewing for to be a CEO of a company, uh, you are a great charismatic person. I mean,
Yes.
you've made it to that role because you're great in speaking and in talking and in, and so really understanding the skills, the qualifications, the things that you need
Mhm.
them to do is important, because it can get easily clouded by a
Yeah.
charismatic personality.
Yes.
So we just need to know. So I think that's important. We talked about the background checks. I think that's
Mm.
critical. Um, and the one thing we didn't talk about too much, but I would say is important, is identifying what key talent is important from a retention standpoint during this
Yes.
process. And so identifying who those people are, because that's going to be important to keep some continuity during that process. So identifying key talent, and then of course the transition, just understanding, communicating with stakeholders, and really acknowledging that this is a really big transition for an organization, and let's really honor that.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. And is there a resource you would like to share with the Take On Board community?
Yes, I would. I really benefited from How Women Leads corporate board
Mm-hmm.
readiness programs.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a week-long summit, usually at the end of the year, where you can choose what kinds of programs you want to take. Uh, so you can pick and choose, and then throughout the year, they have quarterly, like 6-week sessions where you can, go do all of this. So I highly recommend that. And there's also various other organizations that are really helping, trying to get
Okay.
underrepresented folks onto boards.
Fantastic. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, which would be
Mhm.
fantastic. Oh, Tricia, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to tell your story and to share that wisdom and that beautiful practical lens and story lens of succession planning. It is such an important thing for boards to get their head around. So being able to share your story is really important. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with the Take On Board community today.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.